Okay, so we are live on YouTube now. So we can start. Thank you guys for coming. It's the time when we had opted to start. I think we'll be expecting a few more people to join us as we go along, but as they join us, they will join the conversation. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming. Thank you for choosing to spend your afternoon with us at the YMCA. I appreciate you all for coming. We'll take a different approach from the regular standard seminar. We'll just have this as a call, a normal call, and we'll take it from there. So I will start the recording so that we can start the conversation. Thank you. This is the Africa Alliance of YMCA's conversation on peace, justice, and dignity for youth. We are hoping to broadcast this as in a series of webinars and Zoom calls to be broadcasted all across the continent, discussing the Africa youth scenarios. Today I have two very important guests with me, friends of ours, friends of the YMCA. We've had conversations with them. I will allow and ask them to introduce themselves, but first let me start saying that my name is Lloyd Umai. I shall be moderating this session. And for those of us who will be watching this on YouTube, thank you for joining us on YouTube Live. This session is also going to be recorded and shared with everyone else who wasn't able to join us. So maybe I'll start by asking Annabella, if you could go first, just make an introduction of yourself and what you do, and then we can take it from there.
Great, thank you so much, Lloyd, and thank you for having us. And I'm excited to meet all the youth who are going to participate. And my name is Annabella, and I'm a filmmaker originally, a documentary filmmaker, but very passionate. I've always been passionate about issues of youth and youth inclusion. And now for the past 3 years, I've been working on a project that's called Peace Leaders. And we have worked with YMCA actually in Kenya together on that project. And it's a leadership program for young people who are affected by violence in their everyday life. And yeah, we're trying to transfer skills and knowledge so they can implement the 2050 resolution on youth, peace, and security in their local communities.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Maybe we can talk about the resolution 2250 as we go along. Thank you, welcome. Thank you very much for taking the time. Simon?
Hello, everyone. My name is Simon Cabrera Ebers, and I'm a consultant working for the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. And I work with a global youth initiative called the Youth Engagement and Empowerment Program. If it's okay, I would like to take just 1 minute or two to explain a little bit about what we do, because I think that if the audience is interested, you're welcome to take contact with me after this call. So at this program, we aim to empower and train young leaders so that they reach out to their peers in their communities in order to engage them in our work with policy. We want to create youth-informed policy frameworks across the world and have young people as our core partners in this process. In other words, we want to create a bridge between the UN and young people. So as you probably can tell from my work, I believe that young people has a vital role to play in shaping peaceful and prosperous future for all. That is why I'm delighted to be part of this webinar together with all of you. Thank you so much. I look forward to the discussion, and I've also in previous positions worked with civil society and collaborated with YMCA. And yeah, it's been a pleasure. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. Really appreciate your taking the time and the partnership that we've shared together. Really appreciate. The basis of our conversation today is what we call the Africa Youth Horizons Project. It's a scenarios project that we did, a future search, which we launched in 2016 by developing the Africa Youth Fact Book. And this Africa Youth Fact Book, which is available on our website at www.africaymca.org, is downloadable. You can see the Africa Youth Fact Book just is an analysis of trends affecting African youth. And one of the trends that we came across was there are 4 trends: is health, education, and there's a trend on technology and employment. All of these point to certain key activities, including lack of access to jobs, etc., which predispose young people to vulnerability to violence. So one of the things that we need to be very clear about in our conversation is being cognizant of the fact that youth are vulnerable to violence. After the Africa Youth Scenarios, we developed, we had a focus group discussion in the beginning of 2018, and we had 35 young people coming from across the continent to discuss the future search proper from the Africa Youth Scenarios, from the Africa Youth Fact Book. And this was a trend, a future search process which developed 3 key horizons: the green, the blue, and the red horizon. So for the purpose of today's meeting, for the purpose of today's conversation, I think we will be discussing and we will be watching first the green and the red horizon, and we will be addressing these 2 horizons with the intention of leading conversations around what is the importance of peace, justice, and dignity in enabling African youth to drive the future of the continent. And then we will look at policy initiatives surrounding this. So with your kind permission, please allow me to show a video, the 2 videos of this. I will just share this 2 videos for everyone to see. So let me just share my screen so that we may all see. I will start with the green horizon and share the red horizon immediately after that. Please let me know if are you able to see my screen? Just a thumbs up will do. Okay. And so let me play it. If you're able to hear.
The attempt to answer the different ways in which each dilemma could pan out in the future formed the basis of extrapolating the 3 possible future scenarios Africa might have to face. The Green Horizon is a story of Nakia, an intersex child born in a traditionally religious home in the town of Kilifi in 2013. To protect her from their fundamentalist world, they enrolled her in a science and technology e-learning program, and in her fairly lonely and closed world, she made the virtual space her best friend. Motivated by a deep personal sense of the need for self-expression, inclusion, and equity, she interfaced her sci-tech formal learning with her views on success as we all matter to invent unique social innovations. The most prominent of them all was the platform she created for social ignominies to interact with one another. This platform amplified the voices of minority communities such as cyborgs, among others, to fully enjoy their personal freedoms and to be respected. Due to the level of resistance they faced from the rest of the society, the community learned to effectively self-organize into citizen cells that coalesced around problem-solving in innovation spaces. A highly interconnected network of innovators in the continent and in the globe, particularly the Global South, began working together under the mantra, sharing is caring, to complete innovations. With time, this economic and social organization of citizens, which at first looked like a passing phase, became a strong global movement that redefined how society functioned. Its way of empowering people for the common good attracted incredible numbers of youth, created constructive citizen participation and camaraderie, as it weakened the prominent role of private organizations and governments. Its emphasis on justice, equity, and solidarity, while maintaining the unique cultural ideals, languages, and values of all people, made it no longer sustainable to have such few people own so much while the rest had so little. Availability of supersonic internet speeds created a conducive environment for tech to thrive. Nakia's incubation hubs, including numerous scholarships to encourage young people to learn and invent technologies that solved uniquely African problems, became the most popular vocation for youth. Becoming an expert in anything was made possible within the shortest time. The wealthy or lazy ones opted for brain chips that simply downloaded the information directly into their brains. Formal learning institutions and analog teaching methods were eventually phased out as self-selected virtual learning for enthusiastic students across the continent became the norm. Invented technologies were made affordable for poor segments of society to eliminate exclusion. Through this platform, Africa became a global lead in numerous tech advances, enabling Africa to leapfrog in many ways. The production of high organic yields in controlled labs achieved the green revolution and closed the food supply and demand gap that was projected to be 300% by 2060. The vicious contestation around land ceased. It was no longer needed to farm. Lack of infrastructure in Africa became a great opportunity to build highly censored infrastructure that compressed time, distance, and lanes. An Africa-Japan partnership saw Africa become the second continent to install space plants and beam solar power from space. Nakia's tech community was engaged to build sun stores and airwell devices in every home to provide free energy and clean drinking water. This was a phenomenal economic and social equalizer that collapsed all the cartels. The do-it-yourself online health system, genome inventions, and hibernation techniques pretty much found cures to most non-communicable diseases that were a threat to human life in 2018. People could even postpone aging in death. They were able to eat whatever they wanted and with the help of body cell trackers, periodically cleansed their bodies. Addictions like alcohol and drugs were no longer a threat. However, there were high prevalence of the internet addiction disorders, IAD, which brought about acute levels of mental illnesses. Gadgets to exercise the brain, elicit emotional reflexes, and education on proper use of technology were innovated. There were also numerous virtual support communities. The law profession was practically non-existent as artificial intelligence AI surveillance technology now courts 99.9% of all criminals who were mostly involved in cyber and other technology crime, the biggest form of terrorism. Brainwave reading technology was programmed to tell the level of guilt in a person with precision. As such, criminal justice shifted from rehabilitative to restorative, where automated punishment was rendered according to the level of the crime committed. A rapist, for example, was encoded to have erectile dysfunction for a period of time as assessed by the machine to pay for the crime committed. Each continent had its own drone and robotic armies programmed with different capabilities in case there was war. Similar forms were used to curb cross-border insecurity. Most people got memory chips in their bodies to store personal information, which made it more secure than before when it was on the cloud or in personal computers. Political leadership became decentralized and structured around different societal interests. The horizontal leadership model eliminated the rulership of one person and adopted leadership by many representatives. This resulted in interconnectedness of the leaders and a representation of all groups for mutual benefits. The low stakes in politics attracted more service-oriented individuals. Most of the proceedings were in virtual barazas. Nakia's movement phased out many jobs and created opportunities for young people. They changed how work was now perceived as human service for mutual benefit, flexible do-it-yourself, and structured to be mostly virtual, with humans comfortably coexisting with robots to complete tasks in the workplace. It created well-paying opportunities across the globe and made Africa a go-to continent, not only because of all the available opportunities, but also because of the social economic structures created that were not materialistic but put in place to cherish experience, freedom, and memories. Technology in Nakia's world completely shifted the notion of sex and marriage. While it was employed to effectively influence youth in sexual and reproductive health decision-making, a shift in characters where one could be whoever they wished to be at any given moment, carry out perverse experiments, and have multiple not hurting anyone relationships. These became the new forms of engagements in the sphere of relationships. By 2063, there were hardly any marriages as we knew them in 2018. On Nakia's 50th birthday, she opted to get a child manufactured for her in a lab. She selected various genes from a diverse and superior genetic pool to create the combination she preferred right before an engineered conception process took place to create superhumans. It always feels like mixing different ice cream flavors in a parlor to get what suits your fancy. This has made human relations among Nakia's peers very awkward and difficult on one hand, but rewarding on the other hand.
Yeah, thank you guys. I don't know what is your, if I can just take from maybe Annabella and Simon, maybe just your first initial reaction on that video. Then we can take it to the next level. Maybe Annabella, we can start with you. What is your initial reaction of that work?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first of all, really well made. Like the whole scenario plays out. Everything is very well connected, I think, and there are many things to consider when making a scenario. I think that's what I found very interesting. Like how everything is connected and how one little thing can actually change a lot. Could potentially change a lot. And yeah, that's actually my first reaction, that I was really like interested what like one little action can bring or could bring in the future. Yeah. And some parts are a bit spooky, like I don't know if I want to have a microchip and but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think also with the conversation coming around COVID, some of what we were saying will happen later in maybe 2045, closer to 2063 has already started to happen. And some of the things had already happened even before we started with the video, but thank you for that. We'll look at a more negative and more spooky scenarios a bit in a few more minutes, but just to hear from Simon also, what's your initial reaction from that video?
Okay, thank you, Lloyd. Well, I think this video actually, it's not too unrealistic in many ways. I think that we can really see a lot of the trends happening right now. And I'm referring to the impact that technology and other developments will have on our life as humans, and how quickly disruptive it brings change. And I think that it's very important that we think around the social implications of what this change will bring. And some of the things raised in the video about this, so if we're using more technologies, we might not need as many jobs as we currently see jobs. So we might have to think around new ways of having meaningful time. And I think the solution in the video is actually brilliant. To solve problems, and that is seen as part of your job, that would be amazing. But I also think that this, of course, also brings a lot of challenges that we have to be aware of, because most likely there will be a few that controls these new technologies, which might create even bigger inequality of the ones that have power and not. So what's the incentive then to kind of make it good for everyone? So there is a lot of, I think the issues that are brought up here are happening. We might not see them in such a big scale yet, but they are happening, and I think it's really important that we talk about it and have a plan so that everyone can actually engage and have meaningful work and lives. So yeah, that's my my initial thoughts, that I think it's timely, it's right on track. There's a lot of things we need to think around, and in many ways, I think it kind of provides not best case scenario, because as Bella mentioned, it's a bit spooky sometimes, but I think change as well is a bit spooky. And but yeah, I think it captures in some aspects where we're heading, and whether we like it or not. You know, technology is changing very quickly, and we need to kind of have a think around that, how will it affect us as human beings.
Yeah, thank you for that. And just maybe also to state that, you know, the stories are actually, the scenarios are actually stories of an imagined future for Africa before 2063, or between now and 2063, with various stages. And what we just saw is the green horizon, which I'm glad you've mentioned. It has a lot of positive. It's actually the positive story of what could happen. But I'd like also to share with you the story of a negative, the negative possibilities, the red horizon. If you'll allow me to just share it. And also, as I'm sharing it, just to welcome, thank you for those of us who've just joined us. Please feel at home, and let me start share. And yes, if you can hear, please. You can hear? Okay.
The Red Horizon is a story of Surafel, who was born in 2013 in the remote pastoralist village of Hayecha. His mentally ill mother was only 16 when she bore him with the help of a traditional birth attendant. She had been raped by her neighbor, who had seen her tied outside a tree often, whenever everyone was out fetching water, grazing animals, or gone to get food rations at the local town. The family only received 4 goats and a cow from their neighbor to atone for this beastly act. Unfortunately, Surafel's mother died due to the unaddressed rape complications and overbleeding during childbirth. Surafel's extended family had to be relocated to another part of the village in 2014 when their compound was earmarked for oil exploration. The men in the family constantly complained that they did not receive compensation from the government, but what Surafel enjoyed most was the proximity of the school the oil company built and the government's directive to keep all children in school to access free primary education. He could finally stop moving around with his family whenever there was no pasture for their animals. When he was 5, he could not help notice the bizarre changes in his community. All of a sudden, this quiet, vastly populated village was bursting with activities. There were so many people that did not speak his local language, graze animals like they did, or draped in traditional shukas. Instead, they wore strange clothes. The people with very light skin fascinated him the most. Their body color resembled skinned goats during the circumcision season. Big houses in town where the goat food rations were built with stone, not the usual grass or cow dung he was used to seeing. He noted that his uncles and cousins no longer liked herding animals. They liked going to the town to wait around the fenced building where their home used to be. 2 of them had been lucky to get jobs as guards, and their lives seemed to have been transformed. They bought nice things like shoes, some metal thing they said was called a mobile phone where people got inside to talk. They often brought bread to drink milk with when they came home for the weekend. Those days when he did not have to sleep hungry were the best for Surafel, and he really aspired to be like his cousin and uncle one day. Violence in his community seemed to have escalated. He was used to the periodic cattle raids when he had to stay outside all night to help protect the family herd. However, since they left their former home, there were fights between policemen guarding the big company and young men in the village. If it was not about chasing the foreigners away, it was about demanding for jobs from the foreign companies or asking for compensation from the government for giving away their land. Many vigilante groups had been formed by young men in the village, but those were quickly quelled. The most threatening of the groups, those who managed to successfully burn one wing of the company property, were incentivized secretly through company jobs. They soon changed their hearts towards the company owners and crusaded for them as development friends of the community. This brought the company some short-term legitimacy to operate. Surafel liked his school because they had good meals and books. He had, however, been disturbed by things that were covered in plastic bags in the school cupboards in every class. One day, when he got a chance to peep at one of the cupboards that had been left open, he saw some gadgets that resembled a television. His friend told him that they were called computers and had been purchased 7 years ago in 2018 for the school computer learning program. Unfortunately, no teacher in the region could operate them at that time, and the school did not have electricity. Since there was no money for Surafel to go to secondary school, he migrated to the local town to try his luck in getting employed like his cousin and uncle. He worked as a gardener, hawked a few wares, before he finally settled into the lucrative commercial sex work introduced to him by his friend. It was discreet and not as tiresome as hawking or gardening, and it paid very well because of the big client base, especially the foreigners. Within a short time, even with his limited education, he was able to accumulate quite a number of assets. A few of his politically connected village mates were lucky to have benefited from the government airlift projects to Western countries to provide non-skilled labor. Most of his friends who stayed in the village, although better educated than he was, had families to feed but were unemployed or working menial jobs. They coped with the increased social pressure by taking cheap alcohol or hard drugs. Surafel buried very many of them who simply gave up. Surafel soon gained high-profile connections with local government and private company officials because of his work. He came to learn that their local leadership had been receiving development resources from oil companies, but they used the resources for their private purposes. Because of how quickly local leaders became wealthy, politics was such a high-stakes game in the community. The leadership also protected the companies by whatever means possible, including perpetrating injustices and violating community rights to ensure uninterrupted operations of the oil companies. In one of the Africa summits he attended in the capital city, he heard that governments were to invest a large percentage of their national budgets on agriculture-related projects to ensure African population could feed themselves, create employment, and commercially produce for export. His local government cartel pulled him on a deal where they will purchase animals at very low prices from the community and sell for export at exorbitant prices, particularly to the Middle East markets. The business was very lucrative for them as middlemen, but after some time, the national project flopped because of embezzlement of the allocated resources. The government had also not paid the commercial loans they had taken out from the Chinese government to build the necessary infrastructure when the oil company first relocated to the community in 2016. The Chinese government finally moved in to repossess the infrastructure projects to recoup their money. Many locals lost their jobs, including his cousin and uncle, but for him, business had never been better. His local town, now called Beijing, had grown into a city since the takeover. The population growth rate outpaced the rate of developing essential services, including housing. Just like other parts in Africa, this inevitably escalated pollution and growth of slums at unprecedented rates. Acute depletion of natural resources as a result of numbers and mining activities intensified disasters and made them more catastrophic. The 2045 seismic tremors that caused a crack along the equator were particularly fresh in Surafel's mind. 50 years later, Surafel and his friends agree that even if the world came to Hayesha village, built modern buildings and exported some of the largest amounts of crude oil, the quality of life is much worse than in the days they lived in huts, wandered around with animals, and just tied sheets. For Surafel, his biggest worry is that his personal success cannot save him from the effects of another tremor, which might just split the continent into two.
Yes, that's the second scenario, which is a bit grimmer. It's a bit negative, and yes. So maybe we could just go back, and also I'd like to welcome the team from Sierra Leone. I know there's a whole group of young people watching us. Please wave from Freetown. I believe you can see us. We are very happy to have you on board. So I'll just back to Annabella and Simon, our two panelists for today. And I'll start now going to addressing, having seen both videos, having watched them and seen what they are talking about. What is the importance of peace, justice, and dignity in enabling African youth to drive the future of the continent, seeing as we have possibly those two scenarios to look into in the future? What would you say? What would you pick from these two conversations, seeing that there are issues around vicious contestation, issues to do with politics, human services, sexual violence, the issue of foreigners, the issue of immigration, which is a worldwide conversation, issues of disasters and catastrophic events, commercial loans, etc., etc. What would be your, how would you answer the question, Annabella?
Hi. I also want to say thank you, Lord, and welcome to the participants from Sierra Leone. You can see all of us, that's great. And yeah, so the last scenario was quite shocking, yet at the same time, like the previous scenario, the Green Horizon, it are things that are already happening, or that are things that are, scenarios that seem quite far away, yet they are starting today. And actually, young people are the ones who will suffer the consequences of what is happening today. So I think this whole project, or this idea of making scenarios for the future, one that's being a bit better and one that's being a bit more grim, let's say, is very important, because it helps us to project and to see like ourselves in that scenario in the future. And we as young people are actually the ones who have to take action in order to reach one of the two scenarios, or another one that might be even better, or the way we want to have Africa and the world, I guess. So I think it just, both videos and general, this discussion shows the importance of young people, and like how we are the ones who actually could provide solutions for the future. And in that sense, providing solution always, in my opinion, is connected to the issues of dignity, peace, and justice. Because only if we are able to live in a peaceful society, and if we feel dignified and we have justice, we are the ones who can provide solutions, right? So that is for me the main basis. And it is also, I mean, a lot of my work and a lot of the work that we do has to do with the Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security.
Yeah.
And which basically, if you break it down, means that we are the solution. And we are the solution means youth are the solution. And in that sense, I think it's always important to see, okay, look at the future and see that youth are the future, but not only that, youth are also actually the present. And we can be the solution now, and we can be the solution for later. So in that sense, I think this resolution is very important and for developing scenarios. And yeah, I think that's
Okay.
my first impression of these two videos.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Simon?
Okay, thank you. I think as the other video, there's a lot of reality in current reality in this video as well. And I kind of want to echo what Annabella is saying. I think what strikes me is the importance of leadership and the importance of transparency, since the issue of corruption is very heavy in this second video. And what feeds into that is also the issue of exclusion. And I think that's where we really have to work. So as I see this red horizon, there are some leaders that are taking all the benefits for themselves and not really asking the people what is in their interest. And already by doing that step, I think you're creating problems and you're creating issues that in the worst case scenario will lead to conflict. So from my perspective, what I really want to emphasize here is as well with the inclusion rather than exclusion as a way of moving forward. And as well, I mean, we know that most, the ones that are affected hardest by the issues that come out from issues such as corruption and leading to violence are young people. And we also know that in many places, the youth are a majority. They have a very big chunk of the population, and completely excluding them won't really lead to any effective solutions. So I think as well, we have momentum right now in the world. We have not only one resolution, but 3 resolutions that kind of advocate for the role of youth. And that actually the UN is behind, and its member states as well has committed to that. So yeah, that's my initial reaction. And I also think what's interesting is that in the 2 different horizons described, we have in the green one where there are youth innovators that kind of come up with solutions that make for a prosperous future, whereas the other one shows kind of a leadership that doesn't really include the rest of the population, and that leads to problems. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I would really like to maybe speak a little bit about Resolution 2250 and maybe other policy initiatives that are coming from the African Union, from the UN, and maybe from your own governments. So maybe, Annabella, you did mention a little bit about Resolution 2250. Because my second question is, what policy initiatives can be taken to address issues around peace, justice, and dignity? And since you've already spoken about it, maybe some of the work that you've done, and it would be also interesting for participants to begin to understand that perspective.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest parts of 2250 is also youth advocacy and how young people are actually should be included in all sorts of decisions on youth, peace and security. So in form of policymaking. And I think also Simone, who's running actually a policy program, can maybe explain a bit more also like what that means. But a big part of the work is what we do at Peace Leaders, at the project that I work for, is actually to try to connect young people with decision makers and to prepare young people to also start thinking that they could actually make a change and that they could bring in policy initiatives and think around the issues that are most important to them. However, it is often also important the other way around to work actually with decision makers or policy makers to see that they actually take young people serious, right? Because as we've seen in the second scenario, if somebody just decides on a future for their village, for their country, for their continent, without taking other people into account and without even giving young people the opportunity to speak, then that's that's very bad, because it doesn't help. But however, I think 20 to 50 is a key resolution, because it actually says that young people should be included in all these decisions. So if it is on peace, or if it's on security and all other issues actually that young people are concerned with. And maybe Simone, you can talk a bit more about the policy dimension of it and how you work with that, if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Annabella. Well, what we try to do is to, just as we mentioned as well, to bridge the gap between reality and the ones affected by policy, which often are young people, and policymakers. So concretely, that means that we engage youth on the ground by training other youth. So we really like to work in a peer-to-peer model, so that we pair youth that have influence in their communities, that has the ability to reach to young people that perhaps normally are not interested to talk about policy-related work. And we think that is important as well, so that not only the ones that are very interested in politics and in policy building get a voice, but everyone. So that's step one, that we try to train those local leaders. And then basically just support them so that they can build workshops for themselves. And these workshops has the aim to collect what young people think on a specific topic matter, because that's what we work with. We have the mandate to work with violent extremism, conducive to terrorism. So that's the topic matter we're working with. Through this whole process then, our aim is to have the perspective of youth from different contexts and to inform policymakers and member states and other stakeholders about what the youth think are important. And then of course we also have the resolutions to support our work, and that the member states has agreed that this is important and it's a priority area, which also helps. So that's a little bit from our work.
Thank you, Simone. Just, if you'll allow me to push the question a little bit further, and maybe we have been talking a lot about violent extremism in this part of the world. And we've had issues to do with the Al-Shabaab here and many other groups, and we've always talked about vulnerability of youth into violent extremism. And we have what we call the From Subject to Citizen, S2C, which is our philosophy at the YMCA, which basically addresses youth vulnerability and linkage to such things as violent extremism. To push the question a little bit further to you, Simone, before coming back to Annabella, maybe we could give us just an overview of some of the issues that you are familiar with when it comes to violent extremism. And, you know, going back to COVID-19, I know it's going to present a new area of vulnerability. how likely are we to see an increase in the activities of violent extremist groups in your estimation as a result of our current reality? Simon. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Okay, so I think it's good to think around vulnerabilities in terms of push and pull factors, and I think push factors and can be seen as reasons for anyone entering into these type of environments, and pull factors. No, sorry, it's the opposite. So pull factors is the reason for going into violent groups, and then push factors are other things that are not met by society or that might push you into seeking engagement with these kind of groups. And I think you should look at it on an individual basis, because we don't know what might be the trigger point for someone to actually join a certain type of group, but we also know that context matters. So if you have in your community a lot of recruitment, and if you have friends that have joined, you're more likely to also do so. I think that's one part of it, but could you maybe repeat the question again, so I will try to answer more directly.
Okay, maybe what was really concerning me is because we're in a COVID situation, and I know there are new pressures that have come upon our communities. I'm just curious to see, in your estimation, where do you think we will be in the next few years when it comes to issues to do with violent extremism, precisely because of COVID-19 as a new factor?
Yeah, thank you. Well, to be honest, we have already seen an increased activity from violent extremist groups, and that they kind of seize the opportunity. And we know that one factor that might lead that you enter these type of groups are grievances. So if you feel like you're excluded from society, if you feel that you are treated in an unjust way, that might be one of the reasons for entering in these type of groups. And of course, the COVID situation put a lot of people under stress, and it's also quite easy for violent extremist groups to, in their narratives, paint out a situation where it makes sense to kind of go against the authorities and play on those grievances. So we are seeing that right now. We know that there is more activity, and specifically online, since we know that restrictions also mean that you spend a lot of time online, and that violent groups then can use that space and that opportunity for them to kind of groom more youth, not only youth, but mainly youth. So those are issues that we have to face and we have to deal with. At the same time, I think, I mean, there is a lot of, we are aware that it's a big issue. We are aware that it is an important issue, and we also know that we need to act on it. So I think more now than before, we have collaborations between different member states, between different entities that are trying to, of course, counter this as well. And I also want to raise an important report that I think everyone should read. It's called Frontlines by UNDP, which basically paints the picture, and that also the progress study on youth peace and security also kind of paints this picture that yes, young people are being targeted, but at the same time, they are the ones who has the capacity to make a change and to stop things. So I think it's important to not only see youth as vulnerable and that they might end up here, but also know they're actors for change. And they are the ones who actually are the key stakeholders in preventing this happening. And the reason for that, I mean, it's quite logical if you think around it. They are very close to the issues at hand. They are the first to know that a friend of theirs is perhaps being contacted by these type of groups. So they have a capacity and an understanding that others, such as others and entities that work with policy and things like that, perhaps do not. So I think at the same time that, yes, we have a threat now, but we're also aware, and we're also aware that if we kind of direct our forces to include young people in this work, that we might hopefully not end up in a worse situation. So that's my take on it.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. Annabella, I don't know if you would have anything to add or...
Yeah, I can actually add something on that, because we just made a big survey among like young peace leaders and peace builders across the globe, and not only so in Latin America, the MENA region, and also in Africa. And as Simon said, actually, that the situation for most of them has gotten worse. So they are reporting that there's more violence actually now, both online on one hand and also offline. So not only violent extremist groups, but like some of the youth that we work with also face criminal gangs, for instance, or they deal with other forms of violence, gender-based violence, for instance, which is on the rise because of the COVID pandemic, because there's definitely, we see a rise there. And this is now from the survey that we did, and also from the perspective of the youth that I spoke with. So there is what you pointed out, there is a rise in violence, and that is affecting young people. However, at the same time, what we also asked for was like, we asked the youth actually, what are they doing or how are they dealing with it? And what we've seen is incredibly creative solution to these issues. Young people who have done fundraising campaigns for other people, who have dealt with the issues that the COVID pandemic posed to them in a very creative and innovative way, and very grassroots, so very on the ground actually. And that is actually what inspired us, or inspires our work. And we see, like Simon said, we see there's a rise in violence, but there's also a rise in, there's a lot of young people who are actually the solution to these issues, and who know the solutions better because they are experiencing them. So that's kind of the hopeful take I would like to take on it, I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you, thank you. I would also now want to open the floor to anyone. If there is anyone who has any question that they would like to ask any of the participants, I would just ask you if you could just raise your hand, and I will just pick you out. If you know how to use the, if you can use the raise hand, you know, function on the, if you could just raise hand, I'll be happy to pick you. Anyone with any question? And just to welcome all of us who've joined from, as we've been going on, thank you. I really appreciate your joining us. Any question that anyone would have? We have, Nana has a question, so you can go ahead and unmute and ask.
Hi,
go
Lord.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Everyone else. So I would want to ask a question in relation to something that Simon said in one of his presentations. He did mention that they are also, what they do is trying to get young people who are not interested in politics and the policy to be involved in the process. And I would want him to speak a little bit on that, and to know how that really works, knowing that they are not interested in the whole policy and then politics thing.
Thank you. Thank you. Simon?
Thank you for the question, Anna. Okay, I think I mentioned it before, but I will go a little bit more in depth because this is very important, and this I think a very good way to work in order to reach people that are not normally interested is to work with positive role models. Okay, so let's say that we are, well, I can give you an example. I did some workshops in my home country, Sweden, in a community where We have had quite a lot of people that have left to fight for ISIS, and we also have most of the people in this community do not feel like they're part of society, and they are not really interested in politics, and a lot of them are involved in criminal activities and things like that. So in order for us to reach them, what we had to do is to create a relationship with someone who has influence in the society, in the community. So from contacts, we then established a relationship with a person that has that everyone in this community know who he is, and they respect him, and they want to know, what he has to say. So our objective then is to build a relationship with this person that has, been in a similar situation before, not been interested in what society has to offer, but now have kind of developed a little bit from that. So can kind of see the benefits of being engaged and trying to influence things. So my job in that whole situation was to make sure that this person felt comfortable and felt ownership about what we're doing, and also thinking that what we're doing is important, and then give him the skills and tools to reach out to people in his community. And he did that, and it went actually very smoothly. He managed to get the perfect type of target group that we wanted to reach. And the results were really good. And I also think what's very useful is if you have someone that is local from the community that understands them, it's easier for the youth to actually be honest and say what they really think. And that's also very important, because if we only get the information that we want to hear, that people think that we want to hear, then I don't think we can reach a meaningful change. So that's one way of working with it. And I think I've been working with those kind of target groups my whole professional life. And this has always been the key. Find the right people that has the contact to the people that you essentially want to reach, and empower them and give them the tools and make them a part of your team. So that's my answer.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm cognizant also of the factor of time, that we only had an hour, and I think we are at the end of the hour. I saw someone called Andrew had a question. I would ask you just to ask you very briefly, because we only have 2 more minutes remaining in the session. So Andrew, I think you had raised your hand, Andrew Banjo, earlier. Do you still have a question you wanted to raise? I think Nana is completely satisfied with the answer. Andrew, you can unmute. Okay, I think maybe he's having problems with microphone. Maybe to conclude for us, maybe Annabella, you could just make one small concluding remark. But before you do so, let me just encourage all participants who are here that this is an ongoing series that is being hosted by the YMCA. We have conversations on the scenarios. We do the showing of the scenarios every time we have a session, and we go ahead to discuss with some experts. And for everyone who joined later, today we had Simone and Annabella, who are friends of the YMCA and who are experts in the area of peace and justice. In the next session, we'll also be having conversations to do with SRHR. We'll also be talking a little bit about environment, and all these are issues which have been shown in the Horizons videos. But back to you, Annabella, maybe you could give a concluding remark and to do with the conversation we've just had, keeping in mind that actually we're out of time. Yeah.
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me also to join the session and this excellent scenarios. And I think the takeaway for me is that these scenarios are actually not as far away as we might think. And in front of me here and everywhere that I work with are young people who can make them happen or not make them happen. And let's work together to build a scenario that we actually feel comfortable with and that we're happy with in the future. And please reach out to me if you have any questions about my project, and I'm happy to share my email if you're, or maybe Lloyd, you can share my email. And thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Annabella. Thank you very much. And Simon?
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, YMCA, for arranging this, and thank you for the audience listening in. My concluding, well, I think, you know, we can't wait for things to happen. We have to take action. That's the reality. You know, the future is happening. It's not happening by itself. So if we want to create a future that we want, we need to take action. I also want to say that please feel free to contact me if you have questions about our work, and we might be able to. We will be doing workshops around the African continent. So if you're interested, let me know. I will answer as quickly as I can. And Lloyd, perhaps you can also send my email to participants.
Sure, I definitely will forward your email, and also just to make everyone aware that we will have a recording of this session online on our Facebook, on our YouTube channel. Just look for us at Africa Alliance of YMCAs. Our website is www.africaymca.org for anyone who is joining us today for the first time. But thank you very much to Annabella and Simon for the time that you've taken. We really appreciate your being with us. I will share your emails to anyone. If anyone would like to have your email, I'll be very happy to share with them. And we are again continuing to be open throughout. So our session for now is over, but we will continue to have this conversation. The team from Sierra Leone will continue to have a conversation, and led by Pius, who is our change agent from Sierra Leone. So I guess everyone is welcome to continue. But I just want to say thank you to Simon and Annabella for coming, and to appreciate your being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you, Lloyd. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So my brothers and sisters from Sierra Leone, I know you had intended to continue with your session, so please feel free to continue with the session. I will stop the recording on YouTube. I will stop the